Okay, for this next section, we're going to take a look at some chords. Now, I know some of you are probably expecting to get this DVD and be tearing all over the neck. I use chords for so many different things, not necessarily just for playing rhythm, but I also use them as a basis for my soloing. I also use them for playing arpeggios. When I look at scale shapes, I view chord shapes. Now, I only actually know 5 chord shapes in total, and I'm very proud to say that I've been playing guitar for pretty much 30 years now. I started when I was 4 years old. I remember getting a chord book that I saved up the money. It was one of these long, skinny, funny-looking chord books. I saved up the money from my paper round and thought, I need to learn some chords. And came home with this book, opened it up, and played through the first page, and that's as far as I got. I got onto the second page and thought, same shapes. And also the way that it was laid out just didn't mean anything. It said chords in the key of C, and it had C, C minor, C seventh, C major seventh, C diminished seventh. It just should have been chords from the root note of C, but then I thought C had all these chords in. It was totally confusing, and after that, I just decided that chord books weren't for me, but if I ever had a wobbly chair or anything in my house, this book would obviously come in handy to prop things up with. That was the last and only chord book that I've ever bought, and my guitar teacher taught me about the CAGED system, and that was it. Everything after that just sort of seemed to come together. So the CAGED system basically uses 5 chord shapes, the shape of C, A, G, E and D. Now, I've mentioned CAGED system on other DVDs that I've filmed for Lick Library, and I'm very, very pro the CAGED system. I don't think enough people explore it. So let's take a look at those basic chords in their most basic form. C, A, G, E, and D. Now, the first thing that we need to understand before we do anything with these chords is we need to look at the voicing, or the order in which the notes of these chords are stacked. If I look at a C chord, I'm aware of the notes, C, E, G, C, E, but I don't think of it like that. I think of it as a series of intervals. So starting from my C, from my root notes basically, the E note is a third, the G is a fifth, the next note is C, it's a first, and then we have another third, E on the top. So you can actually see that the chord is only made up of 3 notes. So if we run through that, the voicing of this chord, and what I mean by the voicing is the order in which the notes are stacked. C, root, E, third, G, fifth, C, root, E, third. So 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, with the root note on the 5th string. If we now look at an A chord, the A chord voicing is root, which is A, 5th E, A, root, C sharp, 3rd, open E, 5th. So the voicing of an A shape is root, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th. The G chord, I play my G chord slightly different to most people. Most of you probably play it like that, whereby you place your first finger on the A string at the 2nd fret. I don't actually like that very much because to me it's a bit of a muffled sounding interval. It's quite muddy. So that B note is actually repeated way up here as an open B. And to me, that's a much nicer sounding chord. So I actually mute out my A string. So I'm going to give you my voicing of the chord, and some of you may already play the chord like that, where you add the D note on the B string, the kind of Noel Gallagher or Slash way of playing the chord. Again, for me, far too many notes. If I play, I might play it like that and eliminate the 3rd totally and end up playing a power chord. So my voicing of a G chord is root, which is G, then I skip the A string, I have D, which is the 5th, G, root, B, 3rd, and then another root, G. So my voicing is 1, 5, 1, 3, 1, with the root on the 6th string. Okay, our next shape is the E chord, and the voicing for this is E, root, A, 5th, E, root, G sharp, 3rd, B, 5th, E, root. So the voicing, 1, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1, with the root on the 6th. Our final chord shape is the D shape, and this shape is root, D, A, the 5th, D, the root, and F sharp, the major 3rd. So 1, 5, 1, 3, and that's the voicing of all of the shapes. Now what I would suggest you do is write those down, and every night when you have your cup of hot cocoa before you go to bed, sit down and just read that list. And now there is a purpose for that exercise, and that is because when we move the chords around the neck, we can then view the chord shape, the scale shape that fits over the top, and then learn formulas for chords, and then we can see which notes are redundant. For instance, if I'm playing C, if I want to turn that into a major 7th chord, all I've got to think is a major 7th voicing, or should I say formula, is root, 3rd, 5th, major 7th. So the major 7th, if I play the scale shape that is situated around that chord, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. There it is, the open B. So how can I play the open B? Well, it's easy. I just eliminate that redundant root note. I don't need that first on the top. Got it there. Remove that note. There's a major 7th chord. If I want to turn that into, say, an add 9, now a 9 is a compound interval, which basically means it's the same as a second, but an octave higher. It's the same as a 3rd is referred to as a 10th, and a 4th is an 11th, and a 6th is a 13th. If I want to play an add 9 chord, the formula of an add 9 is a root, 3rd, 5th, and a 9th. So a 9th is the same as a second. If I look at my chord shape here, play the scale, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, re. There's my second. It's a whole tone above my redundant root note. Simply raise the pitch of the C note by a whole tone to the D note, and there's an add 9 chord. So you can see how if I did this around all of my chord shapes, why would I need a chord book? It's all up here and it's based around just 5 shapes. So, where's the fretboard navigation in this section? You're asking your TV at the moment. We're just playing through a bunch of very basic looking open position chords that we probably learned when we first picked the guitar up. Well, the answer to that is we're going to actually learn how to play in a very, very short space of time, probably less than 3 minutes, all 60 major chords in every single position of the neck. That's quite a bold statement for me to make, so I better crack on with it. Basically, we're going to take the C chord shape and we're going to re-finger the chord so that we keep our first finger free. Now, the reason we're going to do that is that I'm going to raise the chord up by a semitone. When I raise it up, I get something like this. You ready? It's not going to sound very nice. It's not so good, is it? The reason being is that I need to compensate for the fact that I've moved the chord up by a semitone. I need to move the open strings up by a semitone, so that's where the spare finger comes in. It's very cunning. And there we have our new chord. Remember, the root note is there. It's on what our little finger's playing. Think of it when you held the chord like that. There's the root. When we re-fret it, there's the root. Shift it up. Now, if you did the first exercise, which was finding all of the notes, you should know that that note is the note of C sharp or D flat. So there we have the chord of C sharp or D flat major. Let's move on to the A chord. Most of us play our A chord like that. Sometimes we play the 5th in the top, but it's kind of optional. So what we're going to do is re-fret the chord, so we're playing it with our 3rd finger, simply barring the first section of the 3rd finger across the D, G and B. Move it up by a semitone. Shall I play it? Here we go. That's not so bad. Reminds me of being on holiday. We've got to compensate for those open strings by raising them up by a semitone, so bar across the 1st fret, and there we have our new chord based off of our movable A shape. Remember the exercise we did earlier? If we raise the A, it now becomes a B flat or an A sharp, so B flat, A sharp major. The G chord's slightly harder. I would fret that way. Obviously, if you play the 3rd on the A string, you need to use your 2nd finger. I just use my 3rd and 4th fingers. Move that up a semitone. This is going to sound pretty hideous. Yeah, it sounds pretty bad. So our 1st finger's now free. We can raise the pitch up by 1 fret, because that's how much we've moved that part of the chord. As you can see, that's a bit of a stretch, and I'm kind of blessed with rather large hands, so I'm quite grateful for that. There's our new chords, root note, bottom and top E, and there it was G, move it up a semitone, G sharp or A flat. Okay, now the E chord. This is a very common one, and probably most of you know this chord. Play the E shape, but keep the 1st finger free. Move it up by a semitone. That chord does actually work quite nice. What we want to do is raise the pitch of the open strings by a semitone as well. Apply the bar, root note, coming from the bottom E at the 1st fret is the chord of F. That's an F note. Remember, the root note is the note that gives the chord its name. Our final chord shape is the D chord shape. This one's quite tricky as well, and I do actually fret or finger this chord in a slightly different way. I change the voicing, which we'll look at in a moment. There's the D shape, played with the 2nd, 3rd and 4th fingers, making sure that the 1st finger's totally free. Move that up a semitone, put the bar at the 1st fret, and now we have the chord of D sharp or E flat. The way that I change that shape is because I find that it's a bit changy sounding. I know that's a bit of a bizarre word, it's a bit nice. I actually play the note that my 2nd finger plays with my 3rd finger. I don't play the top E, and I bring my 2nd finger over to play the note that I was playing on the top E, but on the bottom E. So I actually inverted the chord. I'm putting the 3rd in the bass, but it's a much nicer sounding chord. You can hear it there. It sounds much nicer than that. Right. Think back to the first lesson that we did on the DVD, and that was chasing the notes all over the neck. Let's start off with the C notes. If we play C, 1st fret B, 3rd fret A, I can form my C shape. Now if we change position as we did in the exercise, C on the 3rd fret A, C on the 5th fret of the G, straight away my fingers want to fall into that A shape. So C as a C shape, C as an A shape. Spell the word caged as well, C, A. So let's take the note on the G string. Remember I said if you play a note on the G string, 3 frets higher on the top and bottom E, you get the same notes. Well, different octaves obviously, but the same notes. And you can see straight away I'm in position to play my G chord shape. Spell the word, C, A, G. Take the bottom and top E's and you can play our E shape. Remember 2 frets higher off of the E strings, we have the same note on the D string, so that will form the root for our D chord shape. Remember we swap it around and play it like that. We can then take the note on the B string, remember 2 frets higher on the A string is the same note, and that gives us our C chord. And we can keep going. C, A shape, G shape, E shape, D shape, C shape, A shape. Oops, get my fingers in there. And yeah, I won't bother with that one. So you can see how I've now been able to navigate way up the fretboard using just one simple chord. Let's go through our cycle of fourths. So go from C, let's go to F. So the lowest point we played an F was here. So I can form the E shape, spell the word caged. The next shape is going to be the D shape, C shape, A shape, G shape, E shape. The B flat chord was the next chord. So there's our B flat notes. Straight away my fingers fall into that A shape. Now the G shape, now the E shape, now the D, now the C, now the A. E flat, first fret of the D string. There we have our D shape. C shape, A shape, G shape, E shape, D shape. Now the A flat note, first fret of the G string. Also, remember 3 frets higher on the bottom and top E, and there's my G shape. I can go from the same roots and play the E. Now the D, A shape, sorry, C shape, A shape, and G shape. And you can see how I'm able to connect all the chords all the way up the neck. So instead of being limited to only playing in the open position or playing E and A bar chord shapes, I've now got this whole thing just seems a whole lot smaller. Now, I did say that I was able to play through all of those chords in probably less than 3 minutes, so I suppose I better get that exercise done. So I'm going to call out the key, only the key, and let's see how we get on with that. Here we go. Start off with C. F. B flat. E flat. A flat. D flat. G flat. B. E. A. D. G. And there you have all 12 keys, 60 chords in every single position of the neck using just 5 shapes.